영상의 구성은 다음과 같습니다. 그럼 한번 시작해 볼까요?
As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you're totally not. As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you're totally not. As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you're totally not. As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you're totally not. As far as is a phrase that you'll hear used in English. In this video, here is the sentence we heard it in. As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you're totally not. So would you read that sentence for me, John?
Of course. As far as a job interview, I think the biggest misconception is that you need to pretend to be someone you are totally not.
All right, so nice job reading that sentence for me. Thank you. Do you know what the phrase as far as means?
I think I do because I hear people saying like as far as something goes, like something like that, but I don't know like what's the best way to use it in a conversation?
I think it often is used to start out a sentence where you state something as far as whatever it is, then finish up the sentence. So I think you'll most commonly see it used in the beginning of the sentence, but not necessarily always will that happen. In this case, you might think the word far has something to do with distance, like I walked as far as I could, but that's not what it means here. In this example, as far as means with respect to or as relates to, about, regarding. You'll see some synonyms that I've used. So it doesn't have anything to do with distance.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Here's a sentence I came up with that I thought could also help explain as far as. It looks like a great day for a picnic as far as I can tell. And that could be switched around to say, as far as I can tell, it looks like a great day for a picnic. And I feel like that might be the more natural way you would hear the expression used, but I purposely tried to put it towards the end of a sentence so that it didn't come across as always having to be in the very beginning of the sentence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So do you feel like you understand the word now?
Yeah, I think I do.
Okay, here's some synonyms that might help you better understand it. So synonyms just mean words that mean the same. So we could replace that phrase as far as with concerning a job interview, regarding a job interview, referring to a job interview. And I think you had mentioned at one time the word about. You could say about a job interview. Do you think you feel like you know the phrase well enough? You want to try making a sentence of your own?
Using as far as?
Yep, using as far as.
Ooh, as far as learning English,
Oh,
I think, learning it from a native speaker is the best and quickest way to be fluent in English.
wow.
Does it make sense?
That not only did it make sense, that was an amazingly great sentence. And I would have to agree with what you said. So I think that is, as far as learning any language, the more you can use it, and especially with a native speaker, the better off. So good job. All right. I like that one.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Shameless plug, but hey, it works.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. Another word that we heard in this video is the word decorum. So before I even read the sentence, you want to try pronouncing that for me? Decorum.
Decorum.
That was good because it's a really unusually pronounced word and you don't hear it used commonly. So you won't have the pronunciation always down if you don't hear a word used frequently.
Gotcha.
So the whole sentence that this came from in the video, there is a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. So that was the whole sentence, but maybe for the purpose of the word decorum, we're just going to focus on that first half. So John, would you read the part I have on the slide there?
Okay. There is a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum.
Decorum. That was really good. Okay.
Thank you.
It was really easy to understand what you said. You pronounced the word really well. The meaning of decorum, I don't know if it's a word you have heard before or not. Like I said, it's kind of an uncommonly used word, but it means appropriate and proper behavior. So do you think, is it a word you've heard before?
I never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Okay, so you're learning something new then.
I am.
If you use this word, you are going to impress your friends. They're going to be like, oh, wow, good vocabulary.
What if they think, who is this guy using this, like, snobby word? I don't know. It's like a snobby or privileged word.
No, I don't think, I guess it just depends on how you use it, right?
Gotcha.
Because knowing that it means proper behavior, there are times and places where you have to have the right behavior. And that would be decorum. And it's just a fancier way, I guess, to say, I hope you have the proper behavior. You can say, your decorum better be exactly what it needs to be.
Wow.
And then people are like, woo-hoo-hoo, look at me.
Brush up the dust, yes.
Yes. So, okay. And here's a sentence with, or actually you already pronounced it for me. I was going to do this sentence next. So you want to try pronouncing decorum? There's the exact pronunciation.
Okay. Decorum.
Yeah. And if you kind of go syllable by syllable, so rum. Decorum.
Decorum.
Yeah, that was good. Okay. And then here really is the sentence that I had for you. We trust he will show the proper decorum. So if you're going to maybe some fancy get together and you're taking someone, you're not sure how they're going to behave, then that's a sentence you could realistically say is, we hope he's going to have the proper decorum and behave appropriately.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You want to read that sentence for me?
Sure. We trust he will show the proper decorum.
Yeah, good job. Okay. And here are some synonyms for the word decorum. Maybe you would have kind of guessed this already from our conversation. Is what's the correctness, the politeness? I guess you could say properness too. So I'm going to ask you if you have a sentence using this word, but before that, can you think of any situations where this word might apply? For example, what's a situation where you think somebody maybe needs to have the proper behavior?
Probably in school or in a class or in a movie theater, or the environments that you are supposed to be really quiet, or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, that's a great example. In fact, we went to the movies yesterday And you do hope that all the other people in the theater have the proper decorum, turning off your cell phones, not talking loudly to your neighbor, and those kinds of things. So those are some really good examples. Think you're ready to try giving it a sentence? Do you have any other questions about the word?
I don't think I do have a question, but I think I will try to come up with a sentence using the word decorum.
Okay, so yeah, think of any of those situations you just described to me, and then use decorum in a sentence about that situation.
Gotcha. For example, what about this? Giving standing ovation, the end of a theater is not always a good, proper decorum. Does it make sense? I don't know.
It does make sense, except for that if you're at the theater, if it's a live performance, maybe differently. I would say it is good behavior, good decorum.
Okay.
So, you wouldn't necessarily do that if you're at the movie theater. Very few people stand up and applaud. But if you've just seen a really good live play or musical,
then it could be.
That could be the right time for the standing ovation.
Right.
There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. So here's the second half of that sentence. Remember the first part that we just talked about? There's a level of, I guess you could say, maybe a little bit of performance or decorum, or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with friends. So now we're going to focus on the second part of that long sentence. And would you please read for me the part on the slide?
Yes, of course. Or at least something different from than if you're chilling in your house with your friends.
Yeah, read that for me one more time because I think you missed a word and added a word.
Really? Okay.
Yep.
Or at least something different than if you were chilling at your house with your friends.
Yep, that time was perfect. You added the word, I think, from in there.
Oh, really?
So, well, sometimes you just do those things, you know what it means, and you just kind of just pops in, you're talking and thinking at the same time and multitasking.
Multitasking, exactly.
Right. So, how about chilling? I bet this is a word you have heard before, right?
Yes, I have. Yes.
And what do you think is the most common use of the word chilling?
Probably at home, after work, you go back home and then probably you just are sitting on a sofa and then sit back and relax,
Yep. That's really well said. And I guess the part I'd want to emphasize is another common way the word chilling is used could be like with regard to something being cold. Our salad is chilling in the refrigerator.
Oh, gotcha.
Between now and dinner, kind of a thing. But you nailed it. This is exactly how it was used. And I think sometimes you have to look at the other words in the sentence and what I would call context, how the word is used. Because if you were to look at this and you see chilling at your house with friends, you'd be like, no, that can't have anything to do with being cold. What's another way that chilling could be used? And you got it exactly there. Chilling means to completely relax. And you gave some really great examples of when a person might want to relax.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. Is it a word you've ever used before or an expression?
I barely use it because I don't know, for some reasons, I just don't use it.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like intense or nervous, so that's why I don't use it, probably.
So maybe because you don't often chill out.
Oh, chill out.
Chill out. The same thing as chilling than if you were chilling out at your house with friends. So if you're the type of person who doesn't relax much, then maybe, you don't experience chilling. However, it is very good to relax. I've been told.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and then here's a sentence. And this is pretty similar to what you just said. He was chilling in front of the TV after he came home from work. Would you read that sentence for me?
Yep. He was chilling in front of the TV after he came home from work.
Yeah. And came home, right?
Came home, yes.
Came home. Yep. Okay. And here's some synonyms or words that mean the same thing. We kind of talked about some of these. Relaxing, unwinding, taking it easy. Those would all be ways you could say the same thing as chilling.
Okay.
Any questions on the word? Do you feel like you got it good?
I think I do have a question.
Okay, let me hear it.
So I think sometimes I hear people, in the United States, people usually, one of the ways they greet people is by saying, what's up, right? Asking like, what's up? And then some people answer like, oh, I'm chilling it, something like that. So I'm kind of wondering, it's okay, for me to answer to the what's up question.
Yeah, I think if
sense?
someone says, what's up, they're asking what's happening. And that's just a shortened way to say it. And if you are just relaxing, if you say something like, I'm just chilling, they'll know you're just kind of hanging around, not doing anything, taking it easy, relaxing, unwinding. So you could totally say that. However, if your boss asks you at work, what are you doing? That would not be a situation where I think you would want to say, oh, I'm just chilling.
That's a good point.
Because I'm sure the boss wants you working.
And I should say, oh,
Yeah,
I'm working.
right?
I'm working my butt off or ass. I don't know what's the tail off.
Probably
Yeah,
I might not use those with my boss. I'm working as hard as I can, or I'm working diligently.
Or I'm doing my best.
There, that's a good way to put it. Yep.
Thank you.
Doing my best. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. This is kind of a long sentence from the job interview video, and we're going to actually look at two different expressions in this. So let me read it for you to get us started. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. And in this sentence, when she talks about the overlap between the circles, that's, if you remember, that's from the Venn diagram where two circles have this overlapping area.
Gotcha.
Okay, so how about the expression aim for? Let's look at that first. Is that something you're familiar with? Have you heard it, used it?
Yeah, I have heard of it.
Okay. And here's an actual definition of aim for, is that it means to have something as your goal, something that you have planned for, or something that you hope to achieve. So could you read for me, now that you kind of know what aim for means, would you read me that long sentence we're looking at?
Yeah, sure. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot.
Yeah, good. That was really well done. Here's another sentence that has the same expression, aim for. She will aim for a good grade in her first college class. I don't know if you ever felt like that, but I know that I wanted good grades in general, and especially I was going to aim for that when I got started. Yeah, you too, maybe?
Oh, yeah, always.
Yep. Okay, so how about now the new sentence? Will you read that new sentence for me?
Yeah. She will aim for a good grade in her first college class.
Okay, and P.S. all classes afterward, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So here's some synonyms or some words that mean the same as that expression aim for. Things like maybe pursue, achieve, seek, or attempt. So like she will aim for a good grade. She will pursue a good grade. She will seek a good grade. Mm-hmm. Any questions for you about the expression aim for? What are some things a person might have as a goal besides grades and a class of some kind?
So one quick question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But I usually hear people saying aim at instead of for. So I'm kind of wondering the difference like between aim at and aim for.
Okay, that's a really great question because it sounds like they would mean the same since they both have the word aim and it's just aim for something or aim at something. And I think that for me, aim for is usually followed by like a noun. Like here, she's going to aim for a sweet spot, or you would aim for success. So that you wouldn't really say, I aim to success, right? So aim for more uses something you are figuratively wanting as a goal, whereas aim at is something like you're aiming at a target, right? Okay. I want to aim at the center of the target, or I aim to achieve success instead of I aim for success. So it's kind of like whether it's followed by a noun or whether it's maybe followed by like a phrase or a verb of some kind. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about that for a minute though. What's something you would aim to have or do?
I'm aiming to have a successful life.
Okay. Yep. So you're going to aim at a successful life. Now, how about aim for? Can you think of a sentence where you might use the expression aim for?
Wait, so aim for so was I supposed to use aim at instead of aim for that sentence that I just
Yeah, I think so. That was my mistake. So because we're really talking about aim for, but then I introduced aim at since you asked about it. So let's go back and do that one again. Okay.
Alrighty.
So aim for a good grade, some synonyms being pursue, achieve, seek, attempt. So use aim for in a sentence of your own. What's something that a person might have as a goal, if that helps you come up with your sentence?
Especially these days, I've been thinking about, the meaning of life. I don't know. It sounds really like philosophical or anything like that, but
sounds very heavy duty.
But I'm really gotten like interested in like looking for happiness in my life. So
Perfect.
I always like try to aim for the happiness in my life. Does it make sense?
That not only does that make sense, that's a great use of it. And I would say probably something a lot of people would aim for, right? Who doesn't want to be happy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for, and think of that as your sweet spot. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I want to aim for, and think of that as your sweet spot. So now let's talk about sweet spot. Okay. One more time, would you read that sentence for me?
Yeah. So then the overlap between those two circles would be where I would try to aim for, and think of that as your sweet spot.
Yeah, good. That was great pronunciation and really good inflection, like expression in your voice. So how about sweet spot now? Don't be thinking of sweet candies and sweet treats, but have you heard the expression sweet spot before?
Yes, I have, but
You have?
I don't know the meaning of that, the word exactly. But
Okay. Well, that's what we're here for, is to try to come up with some new words and some new expressions that you can add to your vocabulary.
Nice.
Yeah. So sweet spot, that means like the ideal place where something may happen, or like the ideal combination of factors. So in the example from the video where she's talking about the overlap between the circles of the Venn diagram, she says that's what you want to aim for, is where those circles overlap, and think of that as your best place. That's your ideal location, or the ideal combination that you're looking for in the situation she described about what to wear for a job interview.
Gotcha.
Okay. Does that help with how the word is, or the expression is used?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay. Feel like that's something you can add to your vocabulary?
Absolutely.
Okay. Good job. Here's another sentence with sweet spot in it. We had to find the sweet spot between challenging and impossible puzzles. And actually, that's a true sentence for me, because my husband and I like to do puzzles. And you don't want them to be too easy, but you don't want them to be impossible. So you got to find somewhere in the middle. That's our sweet spot. That's the ideal type of puzzle that we like. So do you like doing puzzles?
I don't think I've tried it. I don't think I did. I don't know. But it seems like, it's really good way to, what do you call it? I don't want to say like a kill the time or whatever. Spare your
Pass the
time.
time. How about that? Pass the time.
Pass the time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't used to like to do puzzles, but I have more free time now than I used to. And so I found them to be kind of enjoyable, especially when I finish a puzzle.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep. So will you read the puzzle sentence for me?
Yeah. We had to find the sweet spot between challenging and impossible puzzles.
Okay, well done. That was really good. So here's some synonyms for the word or the phrase sweet spot. Best place, optimal place, or you could say best location, the desired location. All of those would mean kind of the same thing as sweet spot. So questions, now that we've talked about it, questions about the word, do you understand it?
I think I do understand the meaning. Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of some situations that might require a sweet spot?
Let me think. How about this? So I like learning English.
Yay.
But like learning English in person seems impossible for me since I live really far away from the city. So learning English virtually can be a sweet spot for me. Does it make sense, or I don't know?
That's good. I might say learning English virtually is my sweet spot.
My sweet spot. Gotcha.
So yeah, that's a good sentence. Great. And I love that it includes learning English. So I appreciate that too.
Thank you. Thank you.
You betcha. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag. So how about this sentence from the video. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag, which probably isn't the best way. You shouldn't start a sentence with the word and, but that's since they're just doing it from how she spoke it. Mm-hmm. So, gosh, I wish I had a red flag to wave.
Yes, but I have orange water bottle instead.
Okay, I'm looking around, but I don't see anything red off the top of my head. So, okay, so would you read that sentence for me?
Sure. And if not, then maybe that's a red flag.
Okay, good. So how about red flag? I mean, obviously a flag, holding up a flag, and it could be red, but used as an expression, do you know what that means? That's a red flag.
I've heard of it, but I never use it.
Okay, so so here you go. Here's what it is. It's kind of like if you're standing in the middle of the road, literally waving a red flag to get somebody's attention because there's maybe a dangerous situation or some kind of trouble that you want to call their attention to. That's what the expression means here. It's a sign or a signal that indicates potential trouble or danger. Not a literal red flag, but something that makes you go, oh, wait, what might be of concern that's coming up? Does that help with how you might use it in a figurative sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. So here's a sentence I wrote to give you another example of red flag. As a possible colleague, and do you know what a colleague is?
Your coworker?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay.
It raised a red flag for me that he got angry over something so minor. So if you picture the situation that here's someone that could be your possible coworker, and they're getting angry over something that could be very minor or very little, and that would be in my head, it'd be like, oh, warning, red flag. Is this the kind of person I want to work with?
Okay.
Have you ever worked with anybody like that?
Oh, all the time, but not anymore.
Yeah, I also have worked with people like that. So that was a kind of easy sentence for me to
Exactly.
write.
Yep.
Yeah. Will you read it for me? My great colleague sentence?
Yeah, sure. As a possible colleague, it raised a red flag for me that he got angry over something so minor.
Okay, nice job. Good pronunciation on everything there. Here's some synonyms for red flag. Warning, alert, caution, of concern. I mean, I guess you could say, danger would be another possible synonym.
Okay.
So how about you feel ready? Any questions on red flag? Do you feel ready to do a sentence of your own? I mean, if you think of some situations that have potential trouble or danger, that might help you come up with your sentence.
I think I do have a sentence using the word red flag.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
So I had a friend of mine, actually, when she was dating a guy who had some kind of gambling problem.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it definitely was a red flag, but she ended up dating the guy and then getting married with him.
And did it turn out well?
I'm gonna just leave it as a
leave it at that.
Yes, leave it at that. Yes.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean that's true, right? That especially if you're starting a new relationship, there's some things you might look out for as red flags if you're hoping that the relationship becomes permanent. So that would be a great example of a red flag.
Right.
So win-win on that because you gave a great example, but also a good sentence to go with it.
Life lesson. Yes.
Yes. All right. Everything in the middle is kind of mushy. 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 So everything in the middle is kind of mushy. So how about that? Would you read that sentence for me, John?
Yep. Everything in the middle is kind of mushy.
Mushy. Yeah, that was good. It's kind of a tongue twister, pronounced mushy, because I feel like your mouth doesn't necessarily go in the direction you're always wanting it to go, but you did a really good job with that. Say mushy one more time.
Mushy.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, perfect. All righty. How about mushy? Have you heard this word before?
I never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Okay.
Never. Mm-hmm.
It's not an uncommon word. It's less common used the way it's used here. For example, in this situation, mushy means poorly defined. So it was unclear, it was uncertain when they say everything in the middle. So like she made reference to what's in the beginning and what's at the end, that really stands out. But what's in the middle is what gets kind of mushy or poorly defined or unclear. Probably the more common use of this word would be if you're going to define something that's maybe like soft and squishy, like the bread dough was very mushy before I put it in the pan to bake it. So kind of a texture thing. And maybe the most common use I've heard of mushy is if somebody is like overly sentimental, then, you know, you might like all kissy kissy, you might be like, okay, that's just a little bit too mushy, like going overboard, going over the top.
Okay.
But in this situation, I think it's important too to say, oh, I've heard the word mushy, and it means like overly sentimental.
Okay.
But then when you go back and read the sentence, everything in the middle is kind of mushy. You might say, you know, that definition of mushy doesn't really fit what I'm reading here.
Right.
And so that's what I would call being sure to define a word by context, like how it's used and the other words around it. Because, it could be a red flag for you. That's the wrong use of the word mushy. And then you think, oh, okay, well, what else does it mean? And it means poorly defined.
Right. Nice.
The directions for the new project were rather mushy. So read that one for me.
The directions for the new project were rather mushy.
Yeah. Okay. So try project.
Project.
Yeah. There you go. Read the sentence one more time if you would.
The directions for the new project were rather mushy.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Project was right on that time. So what do you think that means about these directions?
Directions are kind of like not clear.
Exactly. Do you want to, is this a project you think you'd like to work on?
Oh, absolutely not.
Exactly. No, because the directions are unclear. They're mushy. And here are some synonyms, which I've kind of used and we've talked about, but unclear, confusing, uncertain, that would all be another way to say in this use of mushy how the word is.
Okay. Do
you feel ready to try a sentence of your own?
I can try, but
try. Well, think of, what's a situation that you need really clear, easily understood directions or situation or layout plans?
Probably when you assemble something like furniture, especially from IKEA.
That's the same place I was thinking.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, and those kind of things. Those directions especially, I don't know, probably they use a lot of jargons and stuff. So to me, they sound really mushy. Does it make sense?
I would totally agree. And in fact, I put together something over the weekend, not from IKEA, but there were no directions. It was only pictures.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I felt that was rather mushy because I really wanted to be able to read the words to assemble this thing rather than look at the picture. It was a hoop of some kind. Look at the picture and hope I got it right. So, and IKEA, they have great stuff, but they are kind of known for the lengthy and detailed and relatively unclear directions.
Absolutely. Is it because they are Sweden? They are a Sweden company. They don't.
Sweden.
Sweden.
They are from Sweden, which means they are a Swedish company.
Oh, Swedish company. Okay.
And I'm going to have to say no on that because my grandfather came from Sweden.
Oh, okay.
Which makes me Swedish. So I think all things Swedish are great.
I mean, the reason why I'm saying that is because, I don't know, they tend to use Swedish a lot, especially Swedish. I'm sorry, I just kept pronouncing.
Well, I'm just trying to help you with your pronunciation. Yes, Swedish.
Swedish, especially on their products, so that people, they kind of hoping that people recognize their products as a really good high quality product because they are from Sweden.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe it's something that is lost in the translation, like were the directions originally in Swedish, and so when you translate to English, they seem more complicated or unclear.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good topic for pursuit for another day. That's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot. That's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot. That's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot. That's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot. So here's the second half of a sentence that was in the video. And I don't think we have to go back and capture the first half to be able to understand the word in here. But the second half of this sentence, that's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot. Okay, so please read that for me if you would, John.
Alrighty. That's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatnot.
Yes, right. Okay. So how about whatnot? Is that a word you've heard or used?
I have heard of it, but I never use it.
But never used it. Okay. We're going to add to your vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Whatnot means things that may be relevant, but aren't clearly said or indicated. So it's kind of like, etc. before they leave the interview or whatever, what happens next kind of a thing. It's more of a slang expression. Like I probably wouldn't put this if I were writing a cover letter for a resume, sending it for a potential job interview. I wouldn't say something like, I have many talents such as, blah, 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 and whatnot. And I don't think that would be overly appealing to a prospective employer. Okay. A sentence. They listen to all kinds of music like pop, rock, jazz, and whatnot. So whatnot used here to indicate, though I just named a few: pop, rock, and jazz, but there are probably more. So kind of in this use, it's kind of like etc., so on and so forth. Yeah.
Can you pronounce etc. one more time for me?
Oh yeah. Etc.
Etc.
Not so et. And it really is, I believe it's Latin, and it's really two words, et, E-T. So et, and then cetera.
Etc.
You're saying, say it again.
You're
saying like at. You're saying at, cetera. So et and et cetera.
Etc.
Etc. Yes, right. And the cetera, it always helps me pronounce something if I can see in my head the way it's spelled. And so etc. is E-T, and then the cetera is C-E-T-E-R-A. And then we abbreviate it as ETC period.
Right.
So etc.
Okay.
Cool. Okay. So how about my music sentence? Would you read that for me?
Yeah. They listen to all kinds of music like pop, rock, jazz, and whatnot.
Yep. Say jazz.
Jazz.
Yeah, there you go. Say jazz and whatnot.
Jazz and whatnot.
Good. What's your favorite kind of music?
Country for sure.
Country. Okay.
Since I live in Colorado, Colorado, a lot of people listen to country music. I don't know, whether there is a stereotype or not for, like people living in Colorado, but yeah, I love country music.
I think it could be a bit of a stereotype. Yeah, because obviously not everybody who lives in Colorado likes country music, but
right.
Maybe there's enough country in Colorado and people would assume, oh, hey, so because you live in the country, you like country music.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know. So, some synonyms for whatnot. Whatever. Oh, look, I didn't even remember it was there. There's etc. spelled out and then the abbreviation and then what have you. So you could say, that's the most recent thing they will have heard before they leave the interview or whatever, or what have you, or etc.
I see.
Okay. Do you want to try to make a sentence of your own using?
So before I do that, I have a question.
Oh, go for it. What's your question?
So can I use like a so on and so forth instead of whatnot?
Yes, that's a really great synonym, right? So
okay.
Before they leave the interview or so on and so forth.
Gotcha. What about blah, blah, blah?
Well, you could do that. I don't know that I'd want to use it in an interview.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's something I might say to a friend. Oh, my friend was talking forever, just blah, blah, blah. It's not complimentary, I guess, in most uses. So,
okay.
So don't let me go blah, blah, blah at you. Okay. So you want to try whatnot in a sentence?
Oh, okay. Yeah. My favorite genre of music is country, and my favorite country singers are what is that? David Jordan and Luke Bryan and whatnot.
Okay. So very good. I'm sorry to say I don't know much about country music, so I don't know those singers, but I'll take your word for it that works. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all. Here's a sentence from the job interview video. We could go over and talk about an expression in there. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all. About the phrase be-all, end-all? That's what we want to talk about. Have you heard of that before? Do you know what it means?
I've heard of it, like end-all, be-all, not be-all, end-all. This kind of reverse, yeah.
And you've heard it that way, the end-all, be-all?
Yeah.
I've not heard it that way. I think the more common usage is be-all, end-all.
Okay.
I've also heard it as be-all and end-all.
Oh, okay.
So I think the two most common ways are be-all, end-all, and then be-all and end-all. Because the end-all, be-all, that seems to reverse the order of what I think the meaning would be. Because the end-all being like what's at the end.
Right. Makes sense.
Makes sense? Okay. Would you read that sentence for me, please?
Sure. Well, one place you could start is like looking at the job description, although that's not the be-all, end-all.
Yeah, say be-all, end-all.
Be-all, end-all.
Yeah, you kind of, when you said it before, you kind of put be-all together and said it so quickly that it didn't come across as two distinct words, but more like one. So be-all, end-all. Okay. So here's a definition. So you've heard it. Do you know what it means?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, here's a new expression for you.
Nice.
And I don't remember the situation, but I recently heard this used in some other context. So it really is an expression that you will hear. And now you're going to know what it means. So,
Nice.
Okay. So be all, end all. What it means is something is considered to be like the very best or of the utmost importance. So what she's saying in this reference is you could look at the job description, but that's not going to be necessarily the only thing you should look at. That's not the best place to look. You should go beyond that for more information. So be all, end all, something of the very most importance. Gotcha. Does that help with understanding what the word means?
Yes, it does.
Does? Okay, good. Here's a sentence using be all, end all. Some people think a cruise is the be all, end all vacation. Right? Have you ever been on a cruise?
I never. That's one of my bucket list, actually.
Your bucket list? Okay, well, I have been on a couple of cruises, and I don't know if I think they're the be all, end all, but they are a great vacation.
Really? So, I definitely want to try it.
Yeah, yep. It's a way to see a whole lot of cities or places within a short period of time and have some pretty good food on board. Is
it true that like food there is kind of buffet, so all you can eat, that kind of deal? Or
they do have buffets, and a cruise is kind of famous for having something called a midnight buffet, which is late in the evening, not necessarily midnight. And it has like such a large spread of all different kinds of foods. And
really?
Yeah. We went on an Alaskan cruise, and what stands out to me is not so much the food, but these amazing sculptures they had out of ice.
Ice sculpture.
Ice sculptures. So, like of different animals or like a boat or something like that. So it's very fancy.
Even that was that edible? Like okay to eat?
The ice sculptures?
Yeah, ice sculpture.
Oh no. They were huge. They were as big as a person. Yeah, okay. They were just for decoration, and the food on the platters, that was all, good. And I think and they had like a whole area of chocolate. So that was kind of a fun, like a whole little chocolate buffet on your own. So if you're a chocolate fan, that would be
that sounds really fun.
Yeah. So, okay. So how about my cruise sentence? Would you read that for me?
Yep. Some people think a cruise is the be all, end all vacation.
Say be all, end all.
Be all, and all.
It sounds like you're saying be all and all. So be all, end all.
Be all, and all.
End all.
And all.
There. Okay. And I think maybe it's just that when you say it fast, it kind of, not you, but when anybody says it fast, it kind of blurs together and it doesn't come across as four distinct words.
It might sound mushy.
Oh, good use. Uncertain, unclear, poorly defined.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yes, well done. So some synonyms for be all, end all. I kind of mentioned, but something that is the ultimate, the best, the most important, or the very essential.
Okay.
Feel like this is a word that you might be able to use out and about now, or a phrase?
I am able to use that one in a sentence.
Okay, excellent. Well, and then after that, I want you to use it in real life, but give it to me. Give it to me in a sentence to get started.
So in terms of improving English, especially like a speaking skill, I think practicing speaking with a native speaker is be all and all.
Yep, there you go. And I guess I'm that native speaker, so thank you. I take that as quite a compliment. So
you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and good use of our phrase.
Thank you.
The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these three things about me. The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these three things about me. The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these three things about me. The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these three things about me. The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these three things about me. So in the video, she was speaking about coming up with 3 talking points about yourself. And if you think ahead to what type of that role is, that will help you leverage those 3 things. So leverage is it's not a very particularly common word, but it would be an easily mispronounced word. So here's kind of a written out of how that would be. It sounds like leverage. So have you heard leverage? Can you say leverage for me?
Leverage.
Yeah, that was really good. Leverage. Is that a word you're familiar with?
No, not really.
No? Okay. So how about your turn? Will you read the sentence with leverage in it for me?
Yeah. The type of role that I want to have next is really going to help me leverage these 3 things about me.
Yeah, well, really well done. Okay. That was a great pronunciation of all words, especially leverage. So, and what leverage means is it's like the power to accomplish something. So in this example, it's going to give the person some kind of power or control to be able to use these specifically 3 things about them in the interview role to help them get the position. Does that make sense? Does that help explain not only leverage, but how it's used in the video?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, good. Okay. Here's another sentence with leverage. I will use the new information to leverage my position and gain an advantage. So, for example, if I come up with some new information, I want to use that in such a way that it gives me gain and it gives me advantage in whatever is the ultimate goal I'm trying to accomplish.
I see.
Okay. Would you read that sentence for me, please?
Yeah, sure. I will use the new information to leverage my position and gain an advantage.
Yeah, good. Say position.
Position.
Yeah, there you go. So to leverage my position.
Leverage my position.
Yeah, good. Okay, excellent. So some synonyms for leverage, like to influence, advantage, or sway. And sway can mean like if you're sitting in a swing and you're swaying from side to side, but sway can also be to like kind of convince someone like to change their mind. I'd like to sway you to think that coffee is better than tea.
This sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds right on anyway.
Yes.
Okay. So, can you think of any situations maybe where a person might need some leverage if they're trying to accomplish something?
So probably like, a lot of people, when we, get a new job or transfer to, different company or whatever, I think if we feel like we need new skills, then in order to get promotion or whatever, I don't know, something like that situation.
Yeah, that would be a good situation. So you want to, use some leverage because leverage here it's used as a verb. Leverage can also be a noun, which kind of means the same thing. So in that situation, maybe you would like some leverage to advance in your position.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. So you're just looking for some, helpful power and power, not like in a power hungry bad way, but like the opportunity to control or be in charge of, to have control of yourself or your path, your future.
I see.
Okay. So leverage. Here's your homework assignment. try to find a way to use leverage in the next few days.
Okay. I think I just came up with a sentence.
All right, let me hear
quick.
it. Okay.
So I've learning Photoshop and other what is that?
Programs?
Design related software.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it will leverage my marketing skills.
Good.
Later.
Yep, I agree. Right, because you're gaining some knowledge that will help put you in a better position later. So you're going to leverage.
Oh, gotcha.
Like it. Okay. It can be kind of a litmus test, like, okay, if I emphasize these three things. It can be kind of a litmus test, like, okay, if I emphasize these three things. It can be kind of a litmus test, like, okay, if I emphasize these three things. It can be kind of a litmus test, like, okay, if I emphasize these three things. I'm going to read the whole sentence instead of just this excerpt. It can be kind of a litmus test, like, okay, if I emphasize these three things, whether they move me forward or not in the next round, that's going to tell me whether I'm on the right track or not for me.
Oh, that's a long sentence.
It's a very long sentence, which is why I think what we want to take a look at is the phrase or expression litmus test. And I feel like just what's on the slide here captures enough of the meaning to be able to go over it.
Right. Okay. Well, can I interrupt you really quick?
Of course.
So you said in the beginning, you like get this sentence from this is a excerpt, and then I don't know what excerpt. What does that mean?
Oh, I wonder when I said it, I said, oh, perhaps I should explain that word. So an excerpt is a portion of. So not the whole, like this is not the whole sentence. It's just a part of it. It's an excerpt. Gotcha. Something kind of cut out from that longer sentence.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Please feel free to ask when you have questions. All right. No need to wait. So before we talk about what litmus test means, I thought it might be helpful if I showed you its pronunciation. Test, I'm sure, is fine, but litmus. So here's how it is pronounced, litmus, and then with the emphasis on that first syllable. So can you try that word for me, litmus?
Litmus.
Yep, you got it. That's really good. So, okay. Have you heard of a litmus test?
I have actually, like, I don't know whether elementary school, high school, like middle school, we from the chemistry class, we used litmus paper to test acidity.
Yep,
I don't know, something like this. It's been a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, it's been a long time for me too, but when I saw this word, these two words, litmus test, that's what it brought back memories of for me too, was high school and college chemistry classes. Gotcha. So, where you do take this little strip of paper that's called litmus paper and you put it into a solution and it is going to do a test for you, like you said, of acid or base. And so what's happening there is that test is helping determine a result. Would you agree with that?
I guess so. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Well, yeah, because you're just sticking that paper in and the result you're going to get is it acid or is it base? So it's kind of predicting or telling you what that solution is.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And from that can come the definition of litmus test, because it's kind of like that. It's an indicator of, in a situation, of future success or failure. So similar to the litmus test or the litmus paper used for the litmus test.
Gotcha.
So now that you know how to pronounce the word and what it means, would you read the phrase for me on the slide?
Yeah, of course. The sentence, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It can be a kind of litmus test Like, okay, if I emphasize these three things.
Right. Okay. So what the speaker was saying is that was going to be a kind of a test for her to indicate the future success or failure of her mentioning or emphasizing these three things about her that she wanted to bring up in the job interview.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
So do you think it's okay to just use test instead of litmus test in this sentence? Or I don't know.
Yes, it would be okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think it's a more sophisticated use of English if you say litmus test.
Okay.
Right? Because that wouldn't be as common of an expression or a phrase for some even native speakers. So if you said that to me as litmus test instead of test, I would be like, oh, this guy really knows his English and knows his expressions.
This guy took the chemistry class in high school or something.
And whether he failed or not, he knew what the litmus test was.
Exactly.
Whether it was an acid or a base, right? Here's another sentence using litmus test. The survey was a litmus test as to how the political candidate would do in the election. All right. So if you put out some survey and you see what are the results of that, that could be an indicator that this candidate may or may not be successful in an upcoming election, for example.
That's a really good sentence.
Thank you. I wrote that one all by myself. Will you read it for me?
Yeah, sure. The survey was a litmus test as to how the political candidate would do in the election.
Yeah, good. Say litmus again.
Litmus.
There you go. It was more clear in that second time that you used it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so here's some synonyms, words that mean the same as litmus test. And actually, I almost put the word test in there, but I thought, no, that seems too repetitive. But you could say confirmation, proof, measure. You know, this is kind of a measure of, if I emphasize these three things, will that be successful? This is a confirmation, because I would guess that with most litmus tests used, I would say figuratively, because it's not a strip of paper, that you're hoping for success.
Right.
Yeah. So how do you feel? You kind of knew the phrase anyway because of chemistry. What do you think about the figurative version of it? Do you think you feel any questions? You feel ready to try a sentence of your own?
I just came up with a sentence.
Excellent. Let me hear it.
So how about this? The success of ChatGPT is a litmus test for AI.
Okay, that's above my head technologically, but I think the general meaning is a good use of litmus test.
It is, yes.
Because you know way more about technology than I do. Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for? Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for? Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for? Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for? Here's a sentence from the video that brings up an expression that I would say is a really common one in English, and that's the expression weak spot. So here's the whole sentence. Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for? Right? So will you read that for me?
Yeah, sure. Can you give me an example of something that might be a weak spot you could prepare for?
Yeah, good job. Great pronunciation on all of that. Have you heard the term weak spot before?
I think I have, but I think you remember you taught me a sweet spot before.
Yes. Oh, yes. Good one. Yeah, sweet spot. So sweet spot is like, the perfect place. And gosh, maybe now's a good time to show you the definition. A weak spot is a vulnerable place or an area of weakness.
Okay, so they are not like antonyms or anything like that. They're not opposite.
I wouldn't say they are. I would say they're very similar and they might be close to antonyms, meaning opposites of each other. But I wouldn't want to say that they are exact antonyms. That would be a good question I can look up for and let you know back on.
Alrighty.
Okay. So another sentence using weak spot. His weak spot when he played chess was that he didn't think enough about his future moves. Have you ever played chess before?
I think I have, yeah, but it's really hard, and then it takes a really long time for me to play it. Yeah, so I just it's not my favorite.
It's not my favorite game either, but you have to think not only about the move you're gonna make, but you have to think about like, okay, well, if I do this, the other person, and then how it, what are all the other moves that will be made? So in this example, the weak spot for this chess player was that maybe he moved too rapidly and he didn't think about, what might happen later on with those moves. So that was his weak spot, was not thinking enough about the moves.
Apparently, he's not a good chess player then.
I would say that is probably true because I think in order to be a really good chess player, you have to think far ahead.
Yes.
And like to a point of really hard to do.
Exactly.
Right. So how about that sentence? Will you read that one?
Yeah, sure. His weak spot when he played chess was that he didn't think enough about his future moves.
Yeah, very good. Great pronunciation and emphasis on the right syllables and even within the sentence. So what do you think is what's a weak spot for, like, what if you were in a job interview? Do you have a weak spot that you wouldn't want someone to ask you about?
Oh, in terms of job interview?
Yeah, like you're sitting in a job interview, answering their questions, and you don't know what questions they're going to ask, but what is something that, you might feel like, oh, please don't ask about whatever it is, because that's my weak spot.
Probably like my introduction. I don't know. I really, every time I know they're going to ask me about, who I am, what kind of candidate I am, but it's really hard for me to, like to be distinctive, from other candidates. I don't know.
Yeah, so that you stand out.
Yeah, to stand out.
Yeah. Like a weak spot for me is I'm kind of I'm a bit of a perfectionist. And so, if they were to ask me how quickly can you complete a task, that would be a weak spot for me because I spend so long doing things and making sure it's exactly right that I know I produce good results, but it may take me longer than the next person.
Gotcha.
So for me, that would be a weak spot, right? So want to try a sentence of your own using weak spot?
Yeah. So when I go to a buffet, I become out of control. That's my weak spot.
Okay. Yep. And if we make it more fun, I would say coffee is one of my weak spots. Right?
Not sweet spot?
No, not. No. Nope.
Okay.
That's not the use of sweet spot. So,
gotcha.
And before we end on this one, here's some synonyms. Technically, your weak spot means your weakness or something that is you're vulnerable. So in many cases, a weak spot could be thought of as like a flaw or a shortcoming or a limitation. So it's most often used in reference to not being a great quality you would want to have, perhaps, or something that you're susceptible to.
A quick question. Is the word shortcoming commonly used here in the United States?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is, yeah.
The reason why I'm asking is because when I had an interview for a previous position, actually, they used this word to ask a question. Yeah, so I didn't even know the meaning of the word. So I ended up asking them multiple times, to repeat their questions and the meaning. So I was really super embarrassed.
Yeah. And I take it that the interview was in English.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, in English.
And maybe a technique around that for any listeners, if you're asked a word, you're not sure of the meaning, instead of saying, in the first place, I think there's nothing wrong with saying, could you please define that word for me? I'm not familiar with it. Because I think that's just you admitting that, oh, wait, you're not perfect. But another way around that, if you're not comfortable with that version, is to say, could you please tell me how you're using that word in this situation?
Oh, that's a really good one.
Right? So you're not admitting you don't know what it is. You might, they might think, you know the word, you're just not sure how it's being applied in this situation or circumstance.
That's a really good tip. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. I'm here to help. It feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience. It feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience. It feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience. It feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience. Here's another excerpt or part from the video, and I'll read the phrase we have on the slide, and then I'll read the whole sentence for you so you can put it all together as one. So the phrase, it feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience, which actually by itself is a complete sentence, but the way it was all put together in the video went like this. That feels like a deficit. And it feels like something I then have to prove that I do have a ton of hosting experience. And I may or may not, right? Okay. So how about ton? This is one of my favorite words as an English teacher. So
really?
Yep. Yep. So what do you think? Is that a word you've heard used before? I have to think it is.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And what do you think ton means?
Ton means a lot.
Yep, exactly. It does. It means a lot. But ton also is like a weight measurement in the U.S. measuring system. It's 2,000 pounds. So I have always felt like ton used in writing is too informal. That there are better words that you can think of, and I have some synonyms for it. But like you just said, ton means a lot, or it means just a significant or considerable amount. So in the video, the person was saying that, but I do have a considerable amount. I do have a significant amount of hosting experience.
Gotcha.
And just out of curiosity, what do you think sounds better if you were reading it and writing? I mean, they were speaking, so it's okay to be sort of informal. But if you read it in writing, what do you think sounds better? I have a ton of hosting experience, or I have a significant amount of hosting experience.
It's definitely significant.
Definitely. And that's what I would tell students is that, ton's just too informal. Find a better word that's not so informal to use. So anyway, just one of my favorite words from my teaching days.
Thank you.
Yes. So here's another sentence using ton this way, right? The two actors had a ton of experience doing movies and television shows. So what that means is they just had a whole lot of experience. So what do you think about that sentence? Would you read it for me?
Sure. The two actors had a ton of experience doing movies and television show.
Yep. And do you think if you read that, you feel like it'd be a good movie or a good TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, if I read that, I might feel like that's the case. So, so some synonyms for ton. You brought up the word a lot, but also abundance, plenty, great deal. And you could go back to the actual definition and find synonyms there: significant amount, considerable amount.
Wow.
Yeah. So here's a fun question I wanted to ask you. So what's something that you have a ton of?
Oh, I have ton of, let me, I wish I could have a ton of money.
Okay, fine. I guess I could have said that. What's something you have or wish you had? Okay. Yeah, we probably all wish we had a ton of money. So,
Right.
Okay. Good job on that one.
Thank you.
So don't take the bait and go down that route with it. So don't take the bait and go down that route with it. So don't take the bait and go down that route with it. So don't take the bait and go down that route with it. Here's a sentence from the video that has a good expression in it that we could go over. Here's your full sentence. So don't take the bait and go down that route with it. Yeah, huh? Do you like to fish?
Actually I don't, but my father-in-law, he loves fishing, but I personally don't.
Yeah, I don't like fishing either. So we're sorry to everybody out there who does like fishing. Sorry. Because you would think take the bait might have something to do with fishing because that's what you give out to fish, right? So read the sentence for me and then we'll talk about what take the bait means here.
Alrighty. So don't take the bait and go down the route with me.
Yeah, and that's a word you can say route, but I think I more commonly hear it pronounced as route.
Route. Okay. Route.
Yeah, and that might be just a difference between maybe American English and British English, right? If you say route, I would know how to spell it. But if you say route without putting it in a sentence, I would spell it R-O-O-T, or I might, like the root of a plant.
Right.
Okay. So take the bait here means to be enticed or tempted into doing something, right? So in the video, it's almost like somebody was going to like kind of plant a seed. The interviewer was going to plant a seed, and then the interviewee, the person being interviewed, like don't go there with it. It's like you can ignore that. Don't take the bait and go down that road with it.
Okay.
Right? Have you ever used, other than related to fishing, have you ever used the expression take the bait?
I never use it.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. We're going to have a new one for you to add to your vocabulary now that you know what it means, right? Here's another sentence. That's what he wants you to do. Don't take the bait. So pretty similar situation to maybe how it was used in the video. If, like someone can kind of like encourage you or, they're trying to get you to do something. They're tempting you or enticing you into doing something. And maybe it's not always the right thing to do. Right? Will you read that sentence for me?
Sure. And that's what he wants you to do. Don't take the bait.
Yep. And I think I more often hear it used in a negative like this, as in don't take the bait. Because when you say, oh, take the bait and do that, that sometimes maybe take the bait has a negative connotation. So it's more like something that you would not want to do than something that you would do.
Gotcha.
Some synonyms for it, and maybe you can see how that would be used in both of these sentences. Don't react, right? Maybe just ignore something. Don't fall for it or be lured into, tempted into doing something that, or answering a question that maybe you don't want to answer or something that you don't want to do. Can you think of any situations in an interview? Where someone might fall for something? Like what's some kind of a question, a situation maybe where, an interviewer would ask that, trying to entice an interviewee into saying something they maybe don't want to say? That's a tough one, huh?
That's a really good question, but I don't. To be honest, I don't think interviewers actually, threw a lot of baits.
Yeah,
interviews,
you would hope not, right? I mean, you'd hope they're sincerely trying to find out if you're a good match or not, and the same for the person being interviewed. Is this a something that would work. So maybe the idea is just think about things before you answer and decide how much information you need to give, because maybe some things are better, like, what I might tell a person interviewing me and what I might tell my friend could be two totally different things.
Right.
Do you think? Yeah. You want to try a sentence or take the bait?
Yeah, sure. So when you go to Costco, as soon as you enter, there are a lot of products that are on sale. But don't take the bait, because some of them, they are about to expire.
Okay. Or they might not be the best product for you. Right? Like as a parent, it was sometimes frustrating to take my little kids to the grocery store because as you're standing in the line, what is right there as you're waiting to pay?
Yep, exactly.
Candy. So then you have to be the bad mom. No candy today. So yeah, don't take the bait and be tempted into buying that candy for your kids.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Like, what's under the surface of this iceberg? 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 A sentence from the video, like, what's under the surface of this iceberg? Will you read it for me, please?
Yeah, like, what's under the surface of this iceberg?
Yeah. And how about that part, under the surface of this iceberg? Do you have any idea what that means?
Is it kind of the like a bottom part of the iceberg? Like a lot of people, I hear people saying a tip of iceberg, that is the top part, but the under surface of the iceberg could be the bottom part.
Yeah. And do you know anything about the difference between the tip and the bottom in terms of size?
Probably bottom part should be like a lot bigger.
A lot bigger. And so really, here's a good one. You nailed it. You got it right on that one, because under the surface of the iceberg is an expression I thought was really similar to the tip of the iceberg. And the idea being that icebergs are much larger beneath the surface than what you see at the top of the surface or above the surface. So the expression means that you might see or hear a little bit, know a little bit, but there's a whole lot more that's not seen or not known.
Gotcha. Wow,
right?
I nailed it.
You nailed it. Good use of an expression, right? I think more commonly you see it as the tip of the iceberg, but these two are definitely related because it's referring to the fact that this is what I see or know, but there's a whole lot more going on that I don't see or know. Okay. A sentence using the expression, the problems you see are just the beginning and there is more under the surface of this iceberg. So knowing what this expression means, what do you think that sentence means in your own words?
So there might be a lot of the more problems like that you don't see.
Exactly. It's like you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and what's under the surface of the iceberg could be a lot more concerning or worrisome. Some synonyms, maybe you could say evident or obvious, of concern. So like, what's of concern? Because I see this, but what's going on here? Okay. Having nothing to do with how cold it is or isn't. We think iceberg, it's cold. Nah, not in this situation.
Gotcha.
So, questions about it?
Nope.
Do you understand it?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, hot and cold. Can you think of a situation that might appear small or minor, but could really be a big deal that you just don't know about?
Probably, I don't know. It might be kind of gross to talk about this, but
I'm worried.
So I heard that if you spot probably a couple cockroaches in your home,
Oh,
then there might be like tons of thousands of like cockroaches like you don't see. So
yeah.
that's kind of under the surface of the
Under the
situation.
surface. Yeah. Where you see one, what's more. Yeah. Thank you for that analogy, that example, because last week, some neighbors who live down the street and around the corner told us that they've been finding cockroaches in their garage,
Ooh,
as have several other people. So
dang.
now we're like, oh, great.
Uh-oh.
So, yeah,
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
Yep. Oh, well, what can you do? So maybe the heat will kill them. I can hope.
That's a good silver lining.
Yeah, the silver lining. Good one. I also want to emphasize that you don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those bullet points on a job description to apply for a job. I also want to emphasize that you don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those bullet points on a job description to apply for a job. I also want to emphasize that you don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those bullet points on a job description to apply for a job. I also want to emphasize that you don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those bullet points on a job description to apply for a job. Here's an excerpt from the video. I'll read you the part of the sentence and then the whole sentence to get the full picture. But and I really think the expression is understood from just this phrase. You don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those bullet points on a job description to apply for a job. And that started out in the video as, I also want to emphasize that you don't need to, and goes on here. So I think it's a good standalone, but just to have the full sentence, it began with, I also want to emphasize that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How would you feel about reading that sentence for me?
Yeah. Dot, dot, dot.
Dot,
You don't
dot.
you don't need to check all of the boxes and all of those black points on a job description to apply for a job.
Yep. So say bullet points.
Bullet.
It sounded like you said more like blood points.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So say it again. All of those bullet points.
All of those bullet points.
Yep. There you go. Because I'm sure that's a word you know how to pronounce. And sometimes, I don't know, my eye is going on to the next word and then I translate something to something different in my head, right?
Yeah.
How about check all the boxes? Have you heard of that expression? Ever used it before? Know what it means?
I never use it. I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay, good. Then we're going to teach you something new today. So check all of the boxes means that you're going to satisfy or fulfill all of the requirements. So in the example, they're saying that, maybe to apply for this job, here are the things you need to do or know, or the experience you may need to have had. So in your head, you almost think of it as like little boxes next to each one of them. And you go down and you read it. Okay, I have this. Oh, I have that. Oh, okay, I can do this. Oh, no, I haven't had this experience. So that's, you're not literally checking the boxes like on a piece of paper, but that's what it means in this, is to either be checking off the boxes of what they think are required, or they say, bullet points on a job description, you need to be able to have or do these kinds of things so that you are going to satisfy or fulfill all those requirements.
Gotcha.
So even if you've never used the expression, it makes sense to you, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Okay. Here's another sentence. The cast checks all of the boxes for me, so this should be a great movie. So what do you think I mean by that sentence?
Cast. Wait, so the cast
means like the characters in a movie. The cast.
Characters. Okay, so
actors, actresses.
So basically, the actors. So there are actors or actress that you like in the movie, so it could be a good movie.
Yeah. Or to say, well, I know this actor and this actress, they tend to do funny movies or movies with a happy ending or movies that are kind of like romantic or cute. So those are checking the boxes for me. I'm like, oh, I know. Okay, that actor does this. So if the cast checks all of the boxes that I look for in a movie, then I'd be like, okay, this should be a great movie.
Okay.
Okay. Try reading that sentence for me, please.
Sure. The cast checks all of the boxes for me. So this should be a great movie.
Yeah. So I feel like we added an expression here for you, checks all of the boxes, but also maybe the word cast is something that you had not heard used this way before.
Right.
Right. Good. Okay. Some synonyms for check all of the boxes: meets, qualifies, answers to. So in the example from the video, you don't need to meet all of the requirements. You don't need to qualify for everything to be able to apply for a job. Okay. So what do you think about that concept, that idea? Do you think a person needs to check all of the boxes when they apply for a job?
I don't think so.
I would agree. What do you think's more important than checking all the boxes?
Even if you don't check all of the boxes, I think it's more important for us to show our willingness to learn and like building blocks.
That's also in the video. So good use of that one. Yeah. No, I personally would agree with you. I think, maybe you can't check all the boxes, but if you get along with others, you're willing to learn and you're a hard worker, maybe that's even more important.
Right.
You want to try a sentence with checks all of the boxes? Doesn't have to be related to job interviews.
Sure. So in order to sell food to people, it's vital to check all of the boxes in terms of food safety. Does it make sense?
It does make sense, but and that is an example of checks all of the boxes, but that's literally checking the boxes, where figuratively this is, mentally in your head, checking things off in your head.
Gotcha. What about this one? So before you decide to get married with this person or not, you have to check all of the boxes like for each other.
Yep. That's a much better example of the expression. The other one was fine, but used as a figurative, that was a really good example. So well done.
Thank you.
You betcha. As long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it. As long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it. As long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it. As long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it. So building blocks, those are something that little kids play with. I don't know, did you ever play with building blocks when you were a kid?
When I was growing up, probably Lego was really popular. So I think that is similar to building blocks.
Yep, it is. They are a type of building blocks. My sister and I, we played with actual, wood shaped, different color building blocks. So I can relate to this expression from what it means figuratively, but also when I see building blocks, I think, oh, those little toys we played with, that was a whole lot of fun. So from the video, we have this: as long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it.
Makes sense.
So building blocks other than toys, have you heard the words used figuratively like this before?
Not in a figurative way, but in a literal way. Probably in a lot of construction sites, and they use a lot of building blocks.
And I guess that's something with English. I don't know if that's also true in other languages where you take the words and they mean exactly this based on the words, but then they have a second meaning that, like building blocks, the toys a little kid plays with, and then building blocks like it's used here. And the way it's used here, it just means a basic element or part of something. So it's kind of like the starting point. What they mean is that if you have the building blocks or the start, you have the basic beginning, and then you can learn, adjust, and evolve. Then they're saying that's kind of the recipe for success here.
Gotcha.
Okay. So now that you know, it can also mean a basic element or part of something. Does that help with the meaning of how it's used here?
Yeah, it does.
Good. Did I have you read the sentence for me?
I don't think you did.
I don't think I did. So I would like you to, because there are a couple of words in there I want to check your pronunciation on.
Alrighty. As long as you can show that you have the building blocks and then the capacity to learn and adjust and evolve, then that's it.
Okay, really well done. I wanted to see how you're going to do with capacity, adjust, and evolve, because I thought those might be a little tricky to pronounce, but you did an excellent job. So
thank you.
Pat on the back for you there. Another sentence with building blocks. The building blocks of success come from dedication and hard work. So meaning that, your foundation, I don't think I put that as a synonym, but that could have been a good one, is, the foundation, the beginning of success comes if you have dedication and hard work. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Good. I'm glad, since I wrote that sentence. So how about reading that sentence for me? Because there's a word in there I want to check pronunciation on.
All right. Okay. The building blocks of success come from the dedication and hard work.
Yep. Good job. It was success, because sometimes that is mispronounced by a lot of people, even native English speakers. So good job.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. Some synonyms there. The components, the parts, the factors, or like I said, maybe foundation would have been another good example of a synonym. So words that mean the same. How do you feel about?
I feel confident.
Confident. Okay. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
So when you're applying for a job, what do you think is more important to have? Experience and checking all the boxes that they put on the application, or building blocks?
I think they are equally important.
Okay. Want to tell me more about that?
So I don't so basically, definitely, you need it'd be, icing on the cake if you have tons of experience, the position that you're applying for. But at the same time, if you don't have building blocks to learn, I don't think people, like interviewers, or they don't wanna hire you, because I don't know, it shows that you are kind of cocky, or not cocky. What do you call it? Like a confident, overconfident.
Overconfident, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
It does make sense, because I think I have some building blocks, and I know I'm dedicated, and I know I'm a hard worker. My sister is an accountant, but if I were to apply for a job with her company, I have no background, no experience, no education in that. So I think a combination of both is really good to have the building blocks, to have some kind of a foundation, but to be able to check off some of the boxes, I think is more the recipe for success in a new job.
Okay. So you should have a combination of both.
So yeah, I said I agreed with you. Okay. So how about building blocks in a sentence of your own? What do you think?
Okay, how about this? So good communication skill, or willingness to be vulnerable,
good,
are important for the success of marriage. Successful marriage.
I would agree with you. I didn't hear building blocks in that.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
You're so focused on, okay,
yes.
I got this. So
the good communication skill is, I can say just good communication and being vulnerable can be the building blocks of successful marriage.
There you go. That's
Thank
it.
you.
And I would agree with your sentence too. I think those are two important things for a good, happy, healthy marriage. So.
Thank you.
Okay, building blocks. Now get out those little toys and start playing. See what structure you can build.